joined the Big Persons community. I paid a lot for their coaching program, and I just felt like a cog in their wheel. I just think that's a losing game. It takes a little bit longer, but relationships take a while to build. And audiences and relationship at scale through audiences take much longer to build. So being on social media maybe isn't the way to build your business. It depends on your business. It works for a certain type of business, but for the rest, it's, more relationship marketing based approach.
Welcome to LinkedIn Marketing Mastery, episode 11. We are talking about human connections at scale with the amazing Renee Lynn Frojo. Is that correct?
You got that right.
Frojo?
Froyo, like frozen yogurt.
You do your homework,
Frojo
Dana.
is the nickname the boys in high school thought was funny. Not that one.
Right, so we're going to be talking about a topic that is very dear to a lot of people, storytelling. So content creation through storytelling, and there's no one that we know better to talk about real storytelling, not the stuff that people have been peddling on LinkedIn nowadays, than Renee. So, and we do have Dana on a car for the first time, which is an interesting approach as well to podcasting. And Renee is going to start by telling us her story and introduce why storytelling through your story, please.
So my story of how I ended up on LinkedIn.
Your story of why are you creating content on LinkedIn and why storytelling? Actually, you were a journalist before, and so what changed? I mean, you've worked with stories in your past as well, but this is more. It's more direct. It's more human. And what changed and why?
Yeah, what changed is a good question. Well, yeah, I've been a storyteller, I like to say, my entire career. I've always told other people's stories, though. So as a journalist, I was covering small businesses, retail, hospitality, nonprofits, philanthropy, what I like to call the fun beats, and just love telling other people's stories because I find every human is fascinating and has a story to tell. So I transitioned from journalism into content marketing because it's such a natural thing to transition to. I feel I wanted to be a higher paid journalist is essentially what I was doing. And I was trying to mine for stories within organizations. And then coming to LinkedIn, knowing the power of storytelling, knowing how it can really make your marketing stand out, I wanted to impart that on people, but I did kind of the same thing everyone was doing. I was trying to teach storytelling. And something I noticed on LinkedIn is, especially the people trying to teach storytelling or trying to do storytelling, weren't actually telling any stories, or they're like these really contrived stories that all fit like very neatly into this hero's journey of transformation. And, and typically it's like, I was struggling, and then I discovered LinkedIn, and now I'm a millionaire and I can help you do it too. And that was the story I was seeing a lot. Or this like thing that we joke about, taking a very small moment and trying to give it meaning, but again, doing it in this contrived way where I was like eating breakfast, pancakes, and it made me think that like B2B marketing is flat these days, it's just, it all feels very forced and ridiculous. So at first I was kind of not doing that so much, but really trying to be like, this is why storytelling is important. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start exploring like a journalist, taking a journalistic approach and just start telling stories about my life as it relates to what I do now and how far I've come and what I'm still figuring out. I'm going to ask more questions than I have answers to. I'm going to take something I noticed and what gave it meaning for me and try to explain that. And that's all storytelling. That's all just using your personal lived experience and learning how to notice things that are happening around you and in the world and in the space that we're in, and putting your unique perspective on it. And then sometimes I just like throw in some stories that show my personality a little bit, or things that I value or I care about, what's going on in my life, as a way to connect with other people who might be experiencing similar things. Like, I'm a single mom, I've been through a divorce, have a new partner and a new family who's welcomed me in. And sometimes I kind of tie it back into what we're talking about in terms of, building an audience or content marketing, but sometimes they just live like that. And they don't need to fit into all my content thematic pillars all the time. I think people keep telling me that that feels refreshing. And I think everyone is capable of doing that. But like anything, it's a bit of a learned skill.
Well, it is social media, isn't it, at its core?
Yes, and it would be nice if we started treating it that way as opposed to just a broadcasting channel, which you need to do a little bit.
A while back, I posted just some random rant saying, can't we just post at a random time a random thought like we used to do in the old times?
You can, and people do, and I do that sometimes too, and sometimes those are my most popular posts.
Yeah.
I feel what comes through in a lot of people's content when it's truly authentic and impassioned like that, it just, the energy comes through almost. There's like an energy transfer when you're actually writing something that you are truly feeling, as opposed to feeling forced to do it because, it's part of, your 5-step marketing plan to sell whatever it is you're selling. Because
I remember when Renee and I first met, I remember we were talking about this, that, as a marketer or whatever you're doing on LinkedIn, you don't have to tie every single thought to some kind of a takeaway or buy from me or something. Sometimes a story is just a story.
Sometimes a story is just a story, yeah. And that's one of the things I like about what Renee does. We've all analyzed the LinkedIn posts so much, and this is what works, and that's how we have to say it. It's what you were saying before, Renee. Like that structure, and it's become so repetitive that nobody actually wants to see one more hero's story, because even the way it's formatted, it's exactly the same as the last person did it. So the only thing that changes is how many years ago, or how many businesses or whatever. So and you don't follow that structure, and I love that. You just write, and there's not a lot of people actually writing on LinkedIn nowadays.
I will say, well, two things. One, a story, I totally agree, Dana, can just be a story, but it's still serving a purpose. And it's serving a purpose either to, say, this is the way it feels for me. Does it feel this way for you too? So the purpose is to really make a connection. Or, this has been on my mind, and this was my experience this weekend, and it was a beautiful experience. And the purpose is just to have my audience get to know me a little bit better, right? So it's not a story for the purpose of like, getting a conversion or getting a lead or trying to do what works and figure out what works. But also in terms of just writing, there is some structure to it. There is some way. Like I always have, like, there is some sort of takeaway, whether it is just connection. And I think about that when I write my posts. And it's usually like the structure is essentially like, this thing happened to me. Here's enough detail so that you can relate to this thing. Maybe this thing feels like the emotion behind this thing that happened to me resonates with you. This is what it meant for me. Maybe this is what it means for you. That's basically the structure without having to follow,
a template.
Yeah, a template for, setup, conflict, context, resolution, takeaway. It's good to learn that, if you really can't figure out how to start with this and have something to piece in, but then that just starts to fade away and it becomes kind of natural the way that you are structuring and writing a post to resonate, right? I told a story on a stage a couple weeks ago. I told a story about when I forged a bunch of pesos to try to buy candy when I was 6. And it was the first time that I've told that story on a stage to an audience. It was during a story slam. And I had written that story before, and I've written it for LinkedIn, and it's a story that I've always gotten, a ton of engagement around. It was so different telling that story for a stage. I couldn't memorize it. I couldn't read it. I couldn't hit the beats the way that you do in writing because it would feel forced and unnatural, and it wasn't for that audience. So you had to learn how to adapt Like I had to teach myself how to adapt that story to tell in person like this or to tell in a LinkedIn Live. And the same is for writing. You have to figure out how to kind of adapt something that like is a good story for your friends or even, for a stage to tell it for a social media platform or for a newsletter, which is even a different format and structure, blog post.
It's all about who's consuming it and where and how. Yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because LinkedIn, you're sharing attention with everybody else on LinkedIn. If it's your email list, then yes, you do have that little bit of attention from your audience, and they will bother to read a little bit more. If it's on stage, then I've never done that, so I actually applaud you for that. And that's I'm guessing that's a tough one. I mean, but all those people are listening to you, but the expectations are high. And so I'm kind of interested in knowing how you forged pesos when you were 6 years old.
I mean, with a crayon and a piece of paper, they were not high quality pesos, but I was determined to go buy myself some candy at the little corner store. Unfortunately, it was closed, so I had to walk home in shame, and then my dad caught me, and he was A, mad at me for sneaking out, and B, wondering what I was going to do with those pesos. And I tried to pay him off. I was like, let's not tell mom about this. So I even tried to cut him a deal. It didn't go well for me. I ended up there's a whole lesson in there about how you have to earn your money, how there's no such thing as a quick buck.
Did you try paying him off with the fake pesos?
Yeah, I did. I was
That's
like,
brilliant.
we're not going to tell mom about this. He's like, yes, we are.
That's probably the best part of the story.
Yeah. So, I think everyone is a storyteller, right? That's how we're humans. That's how we go through life. It's just remembering how to tap into the thing that is meaningful to you and how it might be meaningful to somebody else. And with any of my content, it's just like I try to ask, why am I writing this? A story, actually. Last week, I was visiting my first graders' classroom for back to school night. And I've been kind of writing a LinkedIn post about this because what struck me so much about everything that they were talking about the curriculum, she's in first grade, she's learning how to read, she's learning the basics of math, and they have a big sign posted on the reading section, and it says, always write with the reader in mind. So she's just learning how to write little stories about her little life as a 1-year-old, and they revolve a lot around her family and her new cat right now. But the whole thing that they're trying to train them to do is write with the reader in mind. And that's something that I think we've forgotten.
That's
when
beautiful.
Writing for the internet. And it's such, it's as true for a first grader learning how to write as it is for, a freelancer writing for the internet.
Yeah.
So, it's asking yourself that question. Like a client of mine the other day said, I saw your post about, I'm excited to announce that I'm never going to, I'm going to work with people that will never say I'm excited to announce or I'm thrilled to announce ever again. It. She said, but I'm working with all these Obama fellows. I'm really excited to announce that I'm working with Obama fellows, but how do I do this in a way that's not that post? Right? And I said, well, why are you excited that you're working with Obama fellows? Is there something that you can tap into that you can write about that instead of just telling people I have this announcement to make, or like maybe wait until you've worked with some of them and see if there's any insights from that process about how these Obama fellows are different than your other clients and, what you're taking from them or insights that you've gleaned from them. Like maybe wait until you have more of a story to announce that you're working with, this really cool set of people. So it's just thinking about, again, why am I doing this? Why does the reader care?
Maybe wait until you have more of a story. That's the insight right there. I love it. When you share your content, and it's all about connecting with someone that shares similar experiences to yours, right? That's what it's all about, because that forced building of an audience, and Dana and I have spoken about this a lot, like I want a lot of followers and everybody's chasing followers and joining pods and doing everything they can to boost their engagement. But what's the purpose behind it? It's just a number. Whilst what you're doing is actually you're connecting with people who share similar interests to you. And that's what building an audience actually is. It's not about having 2,000, 10,000, or even 100,000 followers. What are those followers going to do for you? We've heard the typical cliche, you can't pay the bills with the likes, right? And I'm going to relate this to a story, actually. There was an interesting case study I read years ago. There was this girl on LinkedIn. She was a fitness instructor, and all of a sudden she decided to sharing a lot of content about fitness specifically for petite women, because she was small and that's who she was. And interesting thing is that she built such an audience that I think she had like an email list of 1,000 people. She launched an offer, 500 of them bought.
Oh,
Wow.
It was impressive because all of those people resonated to such a high level with her.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that concept with the Kevin Kelly's concept of 1,000 true fans, right? Instead of the big numbers. So that, okay, now we have to be very wary with the cliches, but there's another cliche: be authentic. How do you stay away from these things? How are you authentic without saying be authentic? You know,
I'm trying to work on language to articulate this, because it's actually what people reach out to me the most about. They say, you seem so authentic. So they're using that word, right? They're coming to me and saying, how I want to create content that feels authentic. So we're having an aversion to this word, and it's just a term because it's being overused in marketing like anything. It just becomes, it becomes overused. But that is essentially what people are hoping for, or striving for, or what they connect with, or what they feel is coming out of my content. So like, how do I articulate that in this way? It's become this dirty word. I'm trying to figure out what it is exactly. And I think I keep coming back to this idea of it's honest. Like, being authentic is just being really honest in your content, really honest with your experiences, honest in your approach, that you're not putting on a front to try to figure it out. I'm not quite there on how to articulate authenticity in content, but that's where I'm at and getting a little bit close. But I think it's an important one, because ultimately that's what we're also just seeking as consumers of all this content, is that real connection. And it's interesting. There's still plenty of people that are trying to do this the most efficient way, really, by using AI and outsourcing this and joining the comment pods and all this. And to your point, like, to what end? But so many people are seeing right through that. And it's even really think the bigger risk is that you're damaging your reputation. You're putting your reputation at risk by not being authentic and outsourcing this relationship building tool, right? You're saying, I don't have enough respect or time to actually put in the time myself. I'm outsourcing this to my bot, and I'm just trying to fill my pipeline with as many numbers as possible. And maybe it works to have them buy your low ticket offer or get them into your membership community or whatever it is you're trying to do. But then people have a bad experience right away because they feel like they've been duped. I'm like hearing this more and more and more and more. I joined the big person's community. I paid a lot for their coaching program, and I just felt like a cog in their wheel,
because it's true.
It's true, yeah. So I just think that's a losing game. It takes a little bit longer, but relationships take a while to build. And audiences and relationship at scale through audiences take much longer to build. So I also talk a lot about, because I talk a lot to other freelancers and all of those solopreneurs, like, audience isn't, like, being on social media maybe isn't the way to build your business. It depends on your business. It works for a certain type of business, but for the rest, it's, more relationship marketing based approach.
I couldn't agree more. Yes, we had in the last episode, we had Ash Smith on, and he was talking about relationship-based sales. It's very interesting that you mentioned this now, because you're talking about the other side of relationships, which is the marketing side. So it's the attraction of those relationships at scale, which I love that. And it connects just perfectly with what Ash was talking about last week.
Yeah, Renee, I want to play the devil's advocate here for a second. So I feel that a lot of people who've done content marketing for a while, without being content marketers themselves, struggle with this one thing. Where
Mm.
exactly is the balance between writing with a particular purpose in mind and still being honest? Because you can definitely overdo honesty. Like, for example, I
Mm.
don't care what you had for breakfast. I don't care if you ate Kellogg's this morning or whether you were constipated. For example, because I've seen it
There
all,
is
but
TM.
I
Yeah,
think,
really?
yeah, we've all seen it all.
I
Yeah,
try to be
definitely.
funny.
So my point is how exactly not to go in the one or the other extreme. How to keep the purpose in
Hmm.
mind, but still keep the authenticity, I guess.
I guess I'm going to come back to keep the reader in mind, keep your audience in mind, put yourself in your audience's shoes. Like, are you really curious to know about somebody else's constipation? I mean, one extreme, I'd say, take a risk with your content. I've really been considering whether or not I want to write about the 2 years between my divorce and my new relationship. Now I'm going to be talking about it openly. Now I'm publicly talking about it. And how much dating I did. I dated so much between my divorce and my new relationship, and I loved it, unlike all of my other single friends. And the reason I loved it is because like I said before, I love hearing people's stories. So even if they were bad communicators or it wasn't going to be a good connection and I could tell it wasn't going to go anywhere romantically, I love going on dates because there's always a fascinating story that I could, you know, glean from it or a new perspective I could learn. And then, I had interesting stories to tell at my next date, or at a party or to my friends or, to reflect on my own experiences. And I've been like struggling with whether or not I want to talk about that online, on LinkedIn, because it's quote unquote a professional platform, and I don't want people to get the wrong idea and be like, oh, she's a flute. Yeah, I've gotten to the point where I'm ready to share that story and think that, it's kind of funny, it's telling, and ultimately, is it that risque? Some people might think so. And maybe I'll turn those people off. But I guess I never want to be too afraid to turn people off because I think that's a good sign that we're not a great culture fit, as people. So that's not totally answering your question though. What is too honest? What is too,
Where is the balance?
yeah,
No, it's not more like how do you achieve the balance? How do you keep the reader in mind, but still remain authentic to the purpose and to yourself? Because to me, this has been the
yeah.
hardest thing.
Do you feel like you struggle with that personally?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So what's something that you've recently said, I want to share this, but it feels too raw or
Oh,
honest or
and we're moving into a
TMI?
coaching call now.
I'm curious. I want to
No,
like
no, no,
get
go ahead. I'm
I want to
just
get a
teasing
better
you.
understanding of because the limit's going to be different for different people, right? And someone might have read that post about someone's constipation and however they tied it back to content marketing and been like, that's funny, or I can relate, but it turned you off, So that's something to keep in mind, but I don't know. Is there something that comes to mind for you specifically that we could use as an example?
Yeah, it's not really about sharing my personal experiences per se. It's more about where exactly does my personality end and my marketing starts,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak.
Well, I think another way to think about storytelling for social media is you don't have to tell your life story, right? It doesn't have to be about your experiences necessarily or your transformation or, everyday moments that you're noticing and giving bigger meaning to. It could just be the way that you could tie in. The whole point is to show your personality, what you value, and connect with someone on a more human level, which is typically around our emotions and how something made you feel or made you think or made you think differently. I mean, the most powerful small stories on social media is like that slight mindset shift, right? It's like Fran earlier in the conversation, you're like, I just made that connection. That unlocked something for me. Those are the most powerful things, right? And they can be ever so slight, but it gives you a new perspective, new way of thinking of something. So your whole personal storytelling, pillar on your content calendar could just be that. Like, this is what I noticed, or this is what everyone keeps saying, and I have a different perspective on that. And here's what changed for me, or, I used to think this and now I think this. Why? How?
Yeah.
So you could be safe. You could keep it safe. I don't think everyone needs to go and, be as honest, say, as I feel with my content, sharing about my dating escapades or whatever it is, but that works for me, and that could work for you.
Yeah, that's very important. It's also different for each person as well. I mean, you are a storyteller in nature, by nature. On the other hand, I'm the exact opposite. I mean, my background is direct response marketing. So for me, everything is about a sale, Everything has a return. Everything should be measured and have a return. And I want to tie this to Dana's question: where do you find the balance? I've been working with a client whose content I don't touch clients' content. So what I do is post content, right? So I create the systems to get them into the email list and all of this. So what we've done is he had his own content. His content was good. It's his own style of content, what he's happy with sharing. And what we've done is just basically add a CTA, well, it depends on the post. The CTA changes, obviously, that connects to the story or the post that he's, or the general idea he's trying to bring across. So, all right, you've done this. This is what I'm sharing with you. If you like this, there's something else I can give you, and there's the CTA. So we didn't change the content at all. The content is right there. And this is how I would approach, for example, the storytelling. You just told the story. Now, how can you relate this story to what you have next, to the next to the next step in the customer journey, right? And if you can't, that's okay too. Then don't find my way of looking at content marketing, because content marketing is still content marketing, and not every post needs to have a direct return. So then you decided to share something that does not connect to what you're offering, then don't offer. Just finish it there.
Yeah, my whole philosophy around it is that none of us are the only people doing what we're doing, right? And we all have so much quote unquote competition. Other people that offer the same services that we're offering, are offering the same products that we're offering. It's with their slightly different version, but being able to build a relationship with your audience is all about being the choice, the obvious choice for the person that wants to work with you, right? I'm not the only content marketer on the internet by far, but why would someone want to work with me over, Hustle Bro Steve? Like, Hustle Bro Steve has his audience. People want to work with him because they value the same thing of like efficiency and churn, and, and people might want to work with me because I take this more methodical, people-centric, connection approach. It's not the only part, it can't be the only way that you approach your content or your marketing, but it's increasingly an important piece to differentiate yourself in a very, very crowded space.
That's a really good point. I guess if I have to go back to my question, I would have to go back to the advice right with the reader in mind. So the question would be, how do you know that the stories you tell will resonate with the reader? That's just reframing it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's just a process. I think it's experimentation. It's trying out, maybe taking a little bit of a risk and then coming back to a softer landing and seeing what's resonating, what's not. Are you getting a response when you took it a little further than maybe you were comfortable taking it, or sharing something that or did you not? And don't do it just once. Do it a couple of times, because you could have posted it the wrong time of day, or you could have, or whatever it is.
Please, the LinkedIn gods in some kind of a way, yeah. Yeah, totally makes sense.
I think it's just a process of experimentation, seeing what's resonating, and then doing more of that. And then
absolutely,
Jay Kunzo actually said this. He's like, how do you find that stuff? Go back to anything you've written. A piece of copy that resonated with a friend, a newsletter that you sent that got a response, social post that got more engagement. And then ask the next logical question. So, okay, this resonated, why? Or what can I, what would be, pose this question? And a lot of people had a response to it. So what's the next question? I think that's a really good way of really developing that understanding of where to strike that balance.
That's a really good advice.
That's how I look at the customer journey as well. Like, what's the next thing they're gonna need you for?
Mm-hmm.
It's always putting, like, empathy is the word behind all of this. everything
Mm-hmm.
in marketing works better if you come from a place of empathy, if you can actually
Mm-hmm.
relate. Your audience will always be built around who you are, right? So otherwise, the more we try to fake or create or follow templates, the less it will resonate with anybody. So it won't, because you're not building the audience that resembles you, or that
Mm-hmm.
or that empathizes with your story or who you are. But then you're not building any audience at all. You're just, maybe people will click the follow button, but that's not the same thing, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I posted on LinkedIn for almost a year before I actually put an offer out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
social media is the perfect place for that, because it's, you get such instant feedback, you know, like you post something and you see how people react to it. For example, today I posted about how content on social media is so fleeting and it just disappears. And Dana understood what I was trying to say, but I realized that most people didn't get the point. So kind of need to rephrase that and say it in a different way. So I think that's what you were saying, right? Like, just do it and read the results, and then you'll find your place, right?
And if you're just starting out and there's not a ton of feedback to look to, you just have to, it's a good time to experiment and to really just try everything, right? And like, forget having a super buttoned up strategy. Just try everything and see if finally you hit something after a couple of months.
How long do
Uh,
you think? How long do you think a person needs to test out a particular strategy?
Content,
Yeah,
it's 4 to 6 months.
yeah. I thought you were going to say something like that because, as a coach, what I'm seeing is people just deciding to change approach literally with every single post, and then they're like, "Oh, it's not working." And it's like, well, you need to give it some time. It's not going to work from one post. Like, first of all, people need to kind of get to know who you are. They need some exposure over time, like accumulated, to like get some kind of a feel for you. And then we are either going to see results, or we're either going to decide, okay, that's not going to work out. We need to change the approach. But you can't change
Hmm.
approach with every post you post.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Or
So
week to week or even month to month. I mean,
Yeah,
that really applies to anything in marketing.
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I want to bring this back to something really important here, which is kind of how we announced this episode, AI, right? So, and you touched on AI a little bit. I think that, so AI is really good to help us out, to shorten time frames. I mean, I've performed some miracles with AI, even though, and I'm not the biggest user of AI. But when it comes to actually building an audience, I would stay away from it 100%. And I do think AI is going to play a very important role in what you are doing, for example, in this type of storytelling and connection with humans. Why? Because the more AI content there are out there, the more humans will crave for real human connection and real human words. When you start reading those, in today's world, we are faced with these challenges, and then you're like, and then you actually read one of your posts and one of those stories. I mean, it's a breath of fresh air, right?
And yeah, we're just getting so, our AI is being trained to spot that stuff, and it's an immediate skip because it wasn't written for you. You know, it was written for that person to check off a box that they did their, LinkedIn post for the day or whatever it was. Yeah, it's an incredible tool. I use it all the time for all sorts of things. Um, I don't use it to write, and that includes video, because video can be powerful when it's just, off the cuff, like interview style like this, but can also be powerful if you're, think about the story you want to tell and tell it in a way that, resonates on video. Like there's a way to do that too. It still has to have a strong hook to capture attention on these platforms. But I've had AI try to just, like, script videos for me or hooks, and I still can't get it to make it work sometimes. Sometimes it has some great ideas. I use it to ideate sometimes,
Yeah,
but
AI is good to create that structure, right? Because it understands, it reads the patterns and it can reproduce them. So it's good to find what's actually giving results out there, and then you can use that for your own benefit. But the words have to come from you. Before we went live, I was telling you. Then after this, we publish a blog post, and the blog post is an AI summary. But the funny thing is, it's actually good because it's based on your words. It's the other way around. It's not AI who created it. It's what we created here. Then when it summarizes, it doesn't sound that bad. I mean, obviously it's also out of necessity. If I could have someone actually write the blog post, I would prefer to do that. But this is a podcast, it's not a blog, so it's just a summary for people. They can decide if they're going to watch the episode or not before they actually watch it.
yeah. Yeah, what I still think it's not great at that it is, I say, is nuance. You know, as a journalist, and there's so many journalists that have become content marketers, and the reason I think they're great content marketers is because we really know how to spot the story. And it's even translated into being someone who, like, I'm really helpful with people's positioning and messaging because I can spot the thing that's different. And I've tried to feed AI interviews I've had with people, and I've asked it, you know, spot the interesting, the most compelling pieces of this, right, in different language with different prompts. And it still tends to miss those things that I'm like, no, but that's the thing, you know, that's the thing. And I have to take it and give it, you know, explain it and articulate it. But it's still not great at like catching those subtleties of information that are either like a really unique perspective or the most interesting piece of it, right? Like the most interesting piece of this entire conversation. Like maybe it could do it, but maybe some like we could listen to it and have a better insight into what like because we can also see each other's emotion. I'm seeing what resonates with you by the follow-up questions you're asking, or you know, your body language. And I don't know that AI is quite there yet.
Hey, Renee, can you give us the blueprint for spotting the story?
I wish I could. I've been trying to distill this into something that could be a teachable, you know, framework or something. I guess you could say it's something like what made you really pause and say, I have to think about that a little bit more. Want to ask a follow-up question because it's, you know, because you need to learn more about that idea, or I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for this. I'm working on it. It's
I'm
mhm.
looking forward to that answer, actually.
Yeah, how do you spot the story? You know, it's about training your eye to notice a little bit. And actually, one of my clients that I just worked with, we're wrapping up, she said, I am noticing stories everywhere now. Like I'm just more attuned to it. And it was really just a practice. You know, I interviewed her, I pulled out her stories, I looked through all her newsletters. I'm like, this is the piece, this is the piece, this is the piece. I wrote the hooks for her, and now she's just starting to get it. So I think like anything, it's a process of training your eye, training your ear.
Okay, how do we practice? Do you have tips for practicing?
Practice. I'd say read, watch, you know, consume whatever other people's content and see what it is that makes you pause to think, to want to ask more questions, to know more, and just notice what it is about those things that are making you want to know more. I mean,
Okay.
I think that's one of probably the most simple way to put it. What else? It's sometimes really obvious when you're listening to somebody else and it's not obvious to you, you know, and it's this repetition. You know, I have this really interesting thing and I've blended it with this thing and now I have this thing, but I don't really know how to articulate it. And I'm like, you just did, you know? Let's just simplify that sentence. I wrote about this practice that I do every day. And it is from Matthew Dix, who is a world-class storyteller. He speaks on stages all over the world. He's got a very popular TED Talk. He's a master storyteller. And he has written like 9 books. So both written and oral storyteller. And it's called Homework for Life. Every day you write down a 5-minute story, and you can write down the highlights, the main notes, the main things you noticed about something that stood out to you from your day. That's it. A conversation that you had with your kid, something you noticed in the grocery store, anything. It just makes you reflect on your day and give it meaning. So I say that it's made me a happier person too, because every day, even if it was like a boring day where I'm sitting in front of my computer doing work all day, there are moments in that day that still made it a day worth living. And noting those things not only helps me remember that, it just starts training my eye to notice what is significant and why, questioning why. It's just a process of reflection.
Yeah, these are the so-called glimmers.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can use those maybe for your content or maybe not, but at least you start having a bank. And the point is, again, that you're training your eye to spot things that could have the greater meaning, or just ultimately what made you feel, what evoked an emotion, whether it was sadness or anger or joy, or list all the emotions, like what elicited an emotional response from you, in anything, in a piece, in a day, in this conversation. That's the thing.
Okay, I've got one, and tell me whether this is a good story. Because in my mind, I can't really make this to be a story, in all honesty, but here is a glimmer of my day yesterday. I went to get a coffee, and it was like sort of like late-ish morning, so the sun wasn't really that high up. It's already autumn. So the cafe was just filled with this beautiful light and shadows as well, long shadows. And there was this older lady, maybe like in her 70s, probably even pushing 80s, and she wore this very colorful outfit. And when she was just sitting over there having a coffee, she was reading the newspaper, and she had her tiny fluffy dog with her, and she had packed some dog biscuits for the dog. And she was just reading her newspaper, and like every now and then she would just reach for a biscuit and feed it to the dog, and the dog would just be sitting there like having the time of its life. And she was as well. And what I felt is that for her the time had stopped. She didn't care about anything. And it was amazing to just observe from the outside and just pet the dog a little bit and see her be completely unbothered by my presence there. It's like the time had stopped. She was having her moment. She was in that moment, and she was not letting anyone take it away from her.
That was a beautiful story. I mean, I felt like the way that you described it, I felt the warmth of the light, of the early morning light coming through that cafe. I pictured a cafe that I've been to with that light. And this woman in my mind is very vivid with her colorful dress and her fluffy little dog and her biscuits. So first of all, I think you did a beautiful job of just painting the picture for that story and bringing me into that scene. There's your story. Yeah, what it made you feel is that time had slowed down. And why was that a powerful feeling? Because life is so busy right now, and you're like, you want a moment to slow down, right? We all can probably relate to that feeling of wanting time to just stop for a minute, like, especially because we're all, working in this online space where everything moves so fast and everyone's always online and there's something always happening. And no matter what, you feel like you're missing out if you're not engaging. And it's like unnatural. It's overwhelming to any human to have to live and participate in this world. I think that feeling of wanting life to just slow down is enough of a point of connection that you could just even say that and say, I'm now looking for, and me think, maybe if this is true to you or not, how can I clearly need this, I need a moment to slow down. And I'm trying to build that into my life. And maybe that means like I'm taking the weekend off of social media, and then are you, like, does this resonate with you? What have you done? Are you not feeling this way? If you're not, what have you done to find those moments for yourself? I mean, I think that in and of itself would be a really resonant post for so many people. If that was your question, like, how do I turn this into a story for social media?
Yeah,
I think
guess so. Yeah.
The story is very obvious to me. And the universal connection there is that we're all overwhelmed by the pace of life.
That's amazing.
This woman has unlocked it for herself, and maybe just in this moment. And this is just an assumption that you're making, but
maybe.
Yeah, I want to see that story. I want to read that story. I hope you write it.
And everything you said, AI would say it in 3 words. In today's fast-paced world.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, but no, Renee, like, I had the raw material, and you actually took the, I don't know, the morals of the story out of it. So is that the kind of magic that you do with your clients?
I think so. Yeah, you can ask my clients, but I think so. You had it, right? You had it there. It's just, I think what you were trying to miss is that bridge with how do I connect this back to an audience online? And yes, to me, it was very obvious. And maybe it's obvious to you now too.
Yeah, now that you said it, of course, but beforehand it was definitely not obvious. Yeah.
It's always, yeah, it is. It is. It's harder for us to see it. So, yes, that is what I do with clients because I think, especially with our own stories and our own experiences, it's really hard to see what is right in front of us. Just like, I'm rewriting my entire website and I'm getting help with the positioning and messaging because even though this is something I do for other people, it's so hard to do for yourself. But yes, I help clients unlock those stories, make the obvious connection, and, create more resonant content.
You mentioned something about a retreat that you're organizing. What do you do there? Is it just telling stories all day long?
Um, no, is workshopping your business all day long is what we're doing. So we're basically saying, hey, you need vacation. You need to get away. I mean, imagine getting away from your kids and your family and your life and your computer and your everyday. You don't have to take a break for your business. For 3 days, we're just going to work on your business. And we're going to make sure that you're building a business that's aligned with your personal priorities in your life. Because what we found is that so many solo business owners and freelancers, we build these businesses in search of this freedom and free calendars, and we end up locking ourselves and building these businesses that we hate, or not what we were wanting to build, getting away from, working for somebody else or corporate. And it happens so often. So I've really, I experienced that and I struggled with that. And everything I've done is to create a better business model that aligns with how I work, where my energy's at, how my attention's at, what clients I want to work with. And so it's 3 days of workshopping that with other people, and bridging connections and building connections with a community. So it's a community of other freelancers, who are going to hold you accountable, way past the 3 days. That's what we're doing. I'm sure there will definitely be some storytellings, but it's like pretty strategic and targeted workshops for building a better business in 2025.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah,
When is it?
It's November 6th through 9th. So it's coming up in a couple of months, and we're about to close registration for it in 2 weeks.
Whereabouts?
So, near Tamarindo in Costa Rica, on the west coast of Costa Rica.
Nice.
Amazing.
And the location as well.
Yep, there's going to be yoga and surf lessons built into the morning and evening, and maybe even a turtle release, depending on how many baby turtles they have when we're there.
Cool.
Unfortunately, I don't think I'm gonna make it, but are you gonna do it again next year?
We plan on doing this annually. Yes.
Great.
Fran, let's put it in the calendar.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's
I
make
love
the
it.
commitment.
I love the idea. I love the concept, and it's all about what Renee has been talking about here, like building your business with purpose and actually creating the content around this, with around your values, and building an audience that connects with those values, that resonates with them, right? So yeah, I love it.
Yeah. I didn't also sell pretty much, I wasn't trying to sell anything on LinkedIn for the first few months that I was creating content. And this retreat was the first thing I tried to sell. And I wrote 2 posts about it, and we filled half the seats. And it's because I think and it's a high ticket, it's a high ticket thing I'm selling. And I think it's because of this trust and audience that I built over the past several months without trying to jam something down their throat. I was like, no, I have something really valuable to offer. And I know that this audience is aligned with some of the things that I've been struggling with, and it's addressing some of those things. So
Yeah. This is
Yeah,
content marketing done right.
It is. I want to put that into perspective. So you were sharing about your struggles, about your life. So the people who who actually resonate with your content are people who have similar struggles. And so when you build something like this based on what you feel like, on what's inside of you, all right, I need a retreat, I need to get away, focus 3 days on my business to develop it better, to grow to the next stage. Most of the people, because you built the right audience, because you built it from inside of you, then most of the people are going to resonate with this, and they're going to feel that they need to be there with you, right? Because they have similar struggles.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. Yeah. And like Dana said, that's content marketing done right.
It's a long game.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
Totally.
it. We're running out of time, and we're gonna unfortunately have to wrap up soon. I would love to be here for another 2 hours talking about this. Just to close, Renee, you mentioned as well before you had an offer coming up. Do you want to mention this, so maybe someone struggling with storytelling might be interested in it?
Yep. It's a 101 offer for founders and freelancers, and it's called Story Mining. And I basically mine your brain for all your best stories, kind of how we did with Dana today. And I deliver then a quarter's worth of content. I call them very customized drafts for you with the hook, the takeaway, the main story points, and then you can write it in your own words. So that is my new story mining offer. It's just for people who want to infuse more of their personal experiences and storytelling into their content, and just have not template, but really a framework to be able to do it and have it start building that muscle, with about 3 months of things pulled from your brain to do it. So that's one. And I'm also helping people with their messaging and positioning and content pillars to start if they're not clear on that. So that's kind of an intro offer before the story mining.
That first one, the story mining, that's a unique offer. I've never heard anyone offer anything like this before, but it's genius.
It's pretty niche. Let's see. Yeah, I've had a few clients that have been really happy with it. I've been kind of beta testing it in the background. So I'm going to just be talking about it a little bit more publicly coming up.
Yeah, really looking forward to it.
All right,
Thanks,
we're going to leave links to your LinkedIn and to your website in the show notes. But do you wanna just let people know what your handle is, how they can find you on LinkedIn, or how they can grab these offers as well?
LinkedIn's probably the best place. It's all linked there. So Renee Lynn Frojo, Frojo, spelled with a J.
You'll find that in the show notes together with the blog post, where we'll leave all of Renee's links and socials. We have also a community that we're building of like-minded creators, experts in different aspects of the creator economy. So we have Dana in there, myself, a few other experts. If you want to join us at the moment, this is a free community, and we will leave the link to this one as well in the blog post. So feel free to join us there and enjoy the community.
I'm just, I'm smitten at the insights that Renee gave us regarding storytelling. Actually, I'm still thinking about that story in my head, by the way. My gaze isn't very focused right now, but Renee, it's been a real pleasure. I'm so happy you gave us the time to do that and you joined us today. I'm sure that the audience got a lot of value as well. And just thank you. And I just really look forward to reading more stories from you.
Likewise. Thank you both so much for the time and the questions and the conversation. It was really nice.
This was
to
amazing,
connect.
Renee. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you to our audience as well. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll keep you posted about the next episode.
I'm looking forward to the next episode.
Wherever you're listening to this, make sure you're following or subscribing.
All right.
See you soon. Thanks, Renee. Thanks again. This was amazing.
See everyone. Thank you, and talk soon.